Hello everyone. So in this video what we are going to look at is to how to retrieve some data from ServiceNow tables. So here I have an HTML page that I have created, and I have two input fields and one search button. So what I want is I'm going to enter here, for example, Abel tutor is one of the existing user that we have in ServiceNow instance, and when I'm going to click on search, I would like to have some information such as the email ID, phone number, location, perhaps their manager or escalation point, or any type of information that we have in their user record. Okay, so how we can make this thing possible, how we can display this information. So that's what we are going to see. So the first thing we are going to look at is the REST API Explorer. So in my personal developer instance, I'm going to type REST API. So under System Web Services, you do have REST API Explorer. So basically, this is where you can find all different APIs that which were created for ServiceNow. Okay, so here make sure that you select namespace now, and under API name you can see all the list of the APIs available. So this is in the same way. For example, you have other platforms such as Facebook, LinkedIn, or any other application. They have their own API. But if you want to interact with that application, get some data or post some data, do whatever the operation that you want, you're going to use their API, right? So in the same way, we are going to use the API created by ServiceNow, which is available here, and we're going to send a request to that API now to get some data. Okay, so in our case, it's going to be the table API, and I'm going to select here. So this is the place where actually you can prepare your request. So you can specify what are the query parameters, so on. So the first thing what we are going to mention here is the user table. So table name is going to be the user table. So I'm going to type sys user. So here we have the user table. So this one is selected. And you do have here some query parameters already created for us, but here there are no values. But what we can specify some values, for example, for sys form fields. This one is going to allow us to see some specific information. Okay, so let's say I want to see only the email ID, the phone number, this kind of thing, or some other information. I can actually here mention what field that I want to see. So I'm going to select here user ID and then email. So I'm going to keep it simple because I don't want to select manager or department, location, or mobile phone number, because these information are not available in the developer instance because most of the records are pretty empty. So I'm going to select user ID and email. These are like we can get some information, so I'm going to select that and add two query parameters. The first one is going to be our first name. The second one is going to be our last name, because these are the two parameters that query parameters that we are going to when we are going to send the request that we are going to mention, right? So the first one is going to be the first name. So I'm entering here the database name of that column. So we do have our user table. User table have different columns, like all the columns that we saw when we were clicking on the fields here when we are selecting. And we do specify here what column that I want to have as a query parameter. So I'm mentioning here the database name of that column. So it's going to be first name and the database name first underscore name. So same logic for the last name. So I'm going to mention that here. I'm going to put some value here. So Abel and tutor. Okay. So I'm going to send the request and see what's going to happen. So I have the response. The response code is 200. Okay, so it means that this is successful. And I have a response body. So result username, I have abel.tutor, email abel.tutor@example.com. So now at this point we have made a query, we get the answer, we are able to see it. So we want to do exactly the same thing in our page here. So how we can do that is very simple. You do have here, for example, code samples, and you have the JavaScript code here. So all you need to do is to take this code, use this code in order to send that request. But it's not that much simple. We have to little bit change our code, modify some information, and we want to display our data, right? So we're going to use some other languages for example, we're going to use AngularJS framework in order to display the data in here. So that's the thing we are going to do first. Once we are ready with that, we're going to take this code, modify a little bit, add some more lines, and then test if this thing is going to work or not. Okay, so let's prepare the first part of the code. So here I have the HTML page for this layout. So basically let's say 2 input fields and then the search button. So what I'm going to do is to create some AngularJS directives. So the first directive is going to be ng app. Okay, so I'm going to call it user detail. The second directive is going to be ng controller. So I'm going to call it user detail ctrl, and in here I'm going to create a directive model, ng model. So whatever the value that we're going to have in our input field, we're going to have it in our variable called first name. Okay, so I'm going to have the same thing for the last name, so I'm going to put it right here, then just delete this one. Okay, and in here I'm going to create ng click. So whenever I'm going to click on the button, it should trigger a specific function. So I'm going to call it get user detail. Okay, so it's pretty much done. So we have our directives created. So what we have to do now is let's say start to write our JavaScript function. So here I have created already a file which is empty, get user data JS file, and I create on a specific folder. So in your HTML page, if you do the same thing, make sure that you have the source linked here. So you should have the script tag mentioning where you can find this file. And also, as we are going to use the AngularJS, we should include as well the library, and make sure that you have on the top, not somewhere here or here or here. It will not going to work, and you will not get any error message, so you won't be able to find why it's not working. So make sure that you put this line on the top. So that's the thing. So let's start to create our module. So it's going to be angular dot module, and our module is going to be the following one, right? That's the one that we have created, user detail. Great. And here, great, that's the first line. The second line is going to be pretty much the same thing, but we are going to create a controller. So okay, so I'm going to just copy, I'm going to put this one first, dot now controller. Okay, and my controller name, which is going to be the one that I have mentioned here, user detail control, and control. This is a function, so I'm going to put function and mention the parameter, which is $scope, open curly brackets, and close that one. Okay, so my code will come inside here, right? The code that we have in our here will come in here. Okay, so now what we are going to do is to create a function. Okay, the function get user detail. So that's the one that where we are going should be triggered when we are going to click on the button. Okay, get user detail. So in order to do that, so I'm going to create a variable scope dot get this one equal to function open curly bracket. That's it. So I'm going to just make this one proper, not have any confusion later. Okay, great. So inside here we're going to have our function. So I'm going to just our script. I'm gonna just copy the entire script here. Okay, copy and paste it. So I don't need the following line, and I don't need as well this line as well, and I don't need this part. Okay, so I'm gonna save that one. Okay, so here I have to also add one more line. When we are going to send the request, I noticed that we have some sort of issues. There's some kind of proxy which is blocking the request. So in order to work around, we need to add the following URL just in the beginning of our URL that we have already. So I'm gonna just add that part in the beginning, so we're not going to have that sort of problem. And in here I'm gonna mention what is my user ID, so I mean the username and the user password, so you should enter yours. That's it. And in here I'm gonna mention, instead of able, I should have something else. So I'm gonna have a variable which will have the value of the that we are putting in the input field. So now to do that, double quotation plus plus, and then inside I'm going to mention the variable which is going to be first name, scope first name. So I'm going to do the same thing for the last name. So I'm going to put it right here and just change this one to last. Okay, so this one is done. Great. So all we need to do is to write our code in here. And before even doing that, what I'm going to do is just make an alert to see if it is working or not, if I don't have any problem. I'm going to just make an alert hello right here, so to make sure if I click on the function, it's going to say hello. Okay, I'm going to have an alert. Okay, so let's go here, refresh our page, click on that, I have hello, so it's working perfectly. So I'm going to move on and then start to write our code here. So now what we are going to do is, we do have our response. I'm going to create an alert here, alert this dot response. Okay, so this is the syntax where you can use this, where we have the response. So I'm going to alert the response to see if I'm going to get a response or not. So I'm going to have here some values. So I'm going to enter here, for example, Apple, tutor. So I do have the response. So username, Apple tutor, email, apple.tutorexample.com. So I do have the alert. So what is the goal now is to bring that information into our page, right? To display it, not just to have an alert. Okay, so that's what we are going to do at this level. We're going to write some more lines of code. The first thing, I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it ans. It should be equal to, because I'm going to parse the result. The result that we have in our, let's say, okay, in our, the result that you saw, we will have to parse it. So I'm going to parse it, which is going to be this response. Once we have parsed that response, we're going to store it in a specific variable. So it's going to be, for example, scope dot id, where we'll have the ans result and it was user underscore name. Okay, this was our user ID, and then we're gonna have as well scope ID email is going to be equal ans result, and we're gonna have our email. Okay, so these are the variables that I have created. So I'm gonna create some more tags in my HTML page so we can see them. So I'm going to create 2 more divs. The first div is going to be I'm gonna create a class. I'm gonna give for the class box E, because I have already created some design for the class. So I'm gonna mention here what we call right here an expression, and the expression which is going to allow us to show the data that we have in this variable ID, for example. So I'm gonna type here ID. So I'm gonna do the same thing for email. So I'm gonna just copy that one, create a new one, I'm gonna put F, and then put email here. I'm putting F here because I've already another div style that I have made for that specific div. So that's it. So we do have our expression created, and one more thing that I should add here is, because as we are sending a request, it's there is a kind of issue between between AngularJS and the on the code that we have written here. It's not displaying immediately the data. You should actually click twice in order to display the data. In order to work around, you need to write the following code. So we're gonna push these values to be visible when we are writing this this line of code. So I don't need this one alert. So let's see now if it is going to bring us some data or not. So I should see the username email in my page. I'm gonna just refresh. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna put Fred Luddy. Okay, I should see it, but I do have some sort of layout issue, but I'm able to see that. So probably I didn't do something properly. Yes, because it's not F, it's D. Right. Okay. And then I'm gonna make it Fred. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm able to see the email and also the user ID. So that's how we can bring some information from ServiceNow table using making a REST call and to the API Explorer, and then getting the data, parse it, make it visible in our page. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.